everybody. Welcome to another episode of Uncaptive Agent. And I'm really excited today to have a colleague joining me from West Virginia, Kristin Garlow. Kristin is the president and principal and owner of Mountain State Agency Alliance, which is a strategic insurance agency alliance master agency. As some of you know, we operate here in Oklahoma one agency alliance, also a master agency of SIAA. So Kristin and I are colleagues, but we also do similar work together in that Kristin has, for the last couple of years, been the president of the Safeco Insurance Company National Agents Council. I'm now the Liberty Mutual, part of the same organization, Liberty Mutual's Agency Council president. And so we have sort of twin roles, Kristin primarily in personal and mine in commercial insurance. But Kristin's also been recently featured. Look for her in Rough Notes magazine in the March issue, and she can tell us a little bit more about what that article is about. And Kristin is also a featured speaker coming up in the Liberty Mutual Rise Conference, which is about women in insurance. And Kristin, I want to explore that with you. But first of all, good morning.
Oh, good morning, Tony. Thank you for having me.
Sure. Wonderful to have you. And so, Kristin, we talk on this podcast about where we think the independent agency system, the insurance distribution system, is going over the next 3 to 5 years. And so here we are in the first quarter of 2022. Lots going on in the world that's taking our attention maybe in lots of directions. And yet you are responsible for helping to guide about 80 insurance agencies as they build their businesses. Tell me, how did you get in the insurance business to start with?
Mm-hmm. So 22 years ago, I was a senior in high school and had enough credits to graduate. So our school guidance counselor came to me and said, hey, would you be interested in participating in a co-op program? So I would go to school in the morning, and then in the afternoons, they would place me in a local business to get real life experience and just really start providing their students alternatives to just sitting in a classroom all day if it wasn't necessary. I luckily was placed inside of a small independent insurance agency in my hometown, and I loved it. I worked there all year. The moment I graduated, I tested and received my property and casualty license. And they told me at the time, they said, you are our youngest property and casualty agent in the state as of right now. I'm sure someone's beat me by now, but it was exciting at the time. So I went to Marshall University and actually paid for my college through being a producer at a large independent agency in and around the Huntington area. So I had a very non-traditional student experience. So I would work all day and then I would go to school in the evenings with the other older adults. And it was different, but I got to meet some awesome people. And there is something to be said about graduating from college and not having to make payments on that college education that I am forever grateful to the world of insurance for.
That's great. So you started as a producer, and that's a really, I would say, unfortunately, non-traditional role for a woman in the business. How do you see that now? I mean, do you see that changing? Is it changing much at all, or is it still kind of an interesting woman to be a producer?
Well, statistically, we're still very much outnumbered when it comes to sales and management positions in our insurance industry. I would love to see that change. And part of the things that I'm doing to help create more dynamics of change in that is really speaking about my story. So at the Liberty Mutual International Women's Day event on March 8th, my part is talking about female mentorship, because after I graduated from Marshall, I took a job at a company, to be honest with you, I'd never heard of at the young age of 24. And it turned out great for me. When I took a job at Mountain State Agency Alliance, that put into place the provisions for me to have a female mentor. And that was Mary Kearns. Dan and Mary Kearns are amazing people that had this vision for Mountain State Agency Alliance, similar to yours, Tony. You're very successful, and I'm very proud to be in the ranks of people like you now. But at the time, I had no idea where my career path was going to take me. So Mary was able to mentor me throughout the years and encourage me as women go through traditional life changes that they do. a lot of times in our industry, women have to make the decision on being the default parent or being the breadwinner in the family. And a lot of times women often choose being the default parent. So through my mentorship with Mary, she was able to provide me the type of flexibility and support that I needed to keep on my career path. So that's kind of what I've been talking about over the last few weeks through different seminars, is really promoting the female mentorship in our industry.
Okay. Well, it's interesting that you say that women do have tougher choices, I think, in many respects to make in terms of their career, or at least have had traditionally. And it is, with that in mind, it's a bit surprising to me that more people don't pick the production path in our business because of the amazing flexibility that it offers, along with the potential for really high income. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think the thing that I see most frequently that prevents women from advancing through to a higher revenue generating position, such as producer or management, is that oftentimes the owners of the agencies, statistically, are older males with whom are very, very traditional in their outlook of Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 5, an hour for lunch. And with all due respect, that worked for many, many years. And I'm so grateful for the opportunities that set the stone for the foundation of the insurance industry. But it's 2022 at this stage of the game. And if COVID has taught us one thing, it's that flexibility will be completely the ability for us to be able to move forward. So if we don't have that flexibility with our team members, we are not going to have valuable team members long term. And unfortunately, even if you're a producer, with many of the agencies that I work with, they will still have that outlook that whether you're a producer or you're a CSR, the 40-hour traditional work week is still expected from them. So that's one of the reasons I think you can kind of look at it that way. Other times, unfortunately, I don't think women believe in themselves in a sales position. They feel it's harder to start those conversations and start the type of reach outs you have to do to create conversations that lead to sales. And oftentimes they prefer an account executive or a CSR position because there isn't that outgoing type of confidence that unfortunately women don't have as often as men do. And it really depends on your circle of influence too. So young women that are surrounded by people who are pushing them and telling them they believe in them and providing them the tools to be successful, those women are doing it. And we need to encourage more people, not just men, but more people in our lives to be allies, to help promote women as they create their strength and position in our industry.
As you were talking about older men owners of businesses, and I was
no offense to anyone that's listening.
I was thinking, okay, am I going to take this personally? But in my defense, 75% of our sales team are women, and all really successful.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I think that's more accidental, frankly, than intentional, but it just happens to be the way it is. But what have you? So you're in the business of helping independent insurance agencies grow their businesses. Some are brand new to the business. Some are agencies that maybe have been in business for decades. But as you look at those 80 some odd agencies, how many of them are now led by women?
Right now, about 15% of our agency force that I work with in my footprint are women-owned agencies. We have a few that are all women. It's like these beautiful girl gangs out there just taking over the world of insurance. And I'm so proud of them. And I want to speak for, the men as allies in at least my territory. It's beautiful to see men encourage women's growth. And I have seen more and more over the last couple of years, women take a producer position. And I love it even more when I see them at the top of the production list every month.
Yeah. So how do you think that's going to develop or change over the next 5 years or so? You said 15% of your members are led by women, and I'm going to guess that maybe that's analogous to the 35,000 some odd independent agency principals in the country. Do you think it's less than that today? Have you got any stats on that?
I don't have any stats on that. I would think that I try to measure from the kind of the barometer of how I see things is in my little neck of the woods. So if I can create change and encouragement in women in my footprint of the world, there are people like Tony Caldwell that are out there also creating dynamic, female-driven sales individuals out there.
Sure. Well, so you're still underrepresented because slightly over half the population are women. So how do you think that's going to change over the next 5 years or so? Do you see a lot of progress? Is it picking up slowly, fast? I mean, what does that look like to you?
I'm not sure if it can be a gender-driven strategy for growth and success in the future. I specifically look at the agencies that are really embracing the change that we have in front of us right now, those that are creating a larger digital footprint when it comes to marketing and client interactions, people that are very forward thinking and not being afraid to make changes. Those will be the agencies that grow and thrive over the next few years.
Okay. I want to come back to that in just a minute, but while we're still sort of on the topic of diversity, before we leave that behind, um, you know, diversity as an issue is one that's confronting the whole country in every industry. Certainly, some beginnings of conversation, I would say, in our industry about that, but really not the level of discussion that maybe I've seen in the economy as a whole. And I suspect that that's somewhat due to the conservative nature of the independent agency system. Maybe there's other things involved with that. But certainly, I think we would all love to see our business look like the rest of the country. Uh,
Mhm.
and do you think that's likely to happen in the next 5 to 10 years, or are we going to be, when we get to the end of this decade, still behind in terms of agency ownership, agency employment, looking like the demographics of the United States? How do you see that happening?
Honestly, over the next 5 to 10 years, I feel like the agencies that are here and growing will be bigger, better, stronger, and faster than their competition. With the way that agency acquisitions are trending now, the little guys who aren't embracing forward thinking movement within their agency are going to be gobbled up through acquisitions. So I think in 5 to 10 years, the people that will be left will be the strongest of the bunch, that will be the best representation of our industry as it is today.
I do think I'd agree that we're in a time of profound change, and some of that change is not even yet apparent to us, and it'll be revealed as we go along. And so certainly the strong always survive. But I do think that we have some real work to do as leaders in the independent agency system to try to embrace the fact that we don't have a lot of diversity. For example, in my hometown, about 20% of the population are Hispanic.
Mhm.
It's projected that by 2050, which is really only just a quarter of a century away, essentially, that over 50% of the population will be Hispanic. And yet, there are really not that many Hispanic-owned businesses. Our bank focuses part of its attention in that community, and we find that we have the entire marketplace to ourselves, essentially. Uh, and there's very few insurance agents, to get back to our business, uh, that are Hispanic, and finding people to join us in creating insurance agencies or running, operating, or working in them that come from that background, just as an example, is really difficult. And I wonder how much of that is due to barriers that we have inadvertently constructed, um, that make it difficult for them to think that maybe here's a chance to do something for a living that's useful to the community and highly profitable to me personally. Do you, uh,
Right.
what do you think we need to do as a organization, I guess, or as a not really to fix
Right. Well, to be honest with you, a lot of principals that I have the opportunity to work with, when they have a job position that's available, you post it on Indeed, you post it on your social media, and you're looking for qualified candidates.
that? Hmm.
So quite often, those qualified candidates are going to be very similar in characteristics to you and I.
Hmm.
And where that is all well and good, creating a dynamic of inclusion in the insurance industry comes from taking chances on young talent. And I've had many leaders in this industry say, always hire someone that's not in insurance so that you can train them exactly the way that your agency wants to do things. And I think that's remarkable. And it's a lot of work and it's a lot more effort, but you're creating a pathway for someone that would have never considered insurance in the past. So that kind of goes hand in hand with mentorship, right? So we were talking about that, how Mary was with me. When you bring someone in, you need to, that has the qualities, that has the internal characteristics of someone that you want to represent your brand within your agency. And training them is more than just teaching them to take their property and casualty licensing exam, automation, quote to issue. It's more than that as well. But when you do that and you take the chance on someone that doesn't look like someone on paper that would be the most qualified candidate, you oftentimes can create a very loyal team member that will create change within the agency. So having those conversations with someone saying, here's what we're going to do to get you up and running. Here's what your expectations are from me on what a day-to-day should be like. And here's how I'm going to support you in achieving whatever your goals may be. Sometimes those goals are a flexible schedule. Sometimes those goals are more compensation. Sometimes those goals are someone who wants to feel like they're part of a community. So just having those conversations and looking outside the box when it comes to bringing on new talent can create change in our little towns, and that ripple effect will go on.
That's really every business owner's responsibility. It's one that they don't all embrace, of course. I'm is one of my personal philosophies is that we all stand on someone else's shoulders, and I think you've given a really eloquent testimony to that with the way that Mary and Dan Kearns allowed you to stand on their shoulders and rise to a level that maybe when you were 18 and were getting in this business, you had no idea you could reach, right?
Exactly.
So great examples, and you're now paying that forward as we all should. But my observation is that probably only 10 to 20% of leaders, and I use the term leadership very broadly here, really understand that they have that obligation to pay it forward. But it also seems like those who do understand and embrace it are the ones who are also in the upper 5 or 10% of the income earners and growth achievers in their industry. Do you find that to be true?
I would say yes. Looking at it holistically from how can I make a change for my customers, my agents, my team members, looking at it in such an all-around approach is something that not everybody takes the time to look at. We're very busy. We wear many hats every day. But it's important that we give back to our team members and our communities as much as we give to our own families.
So, and it's good business is the bottom line here. It's good for you, but it's good for other people, but it's also good for your business.
Right.
I know you're going to be featured in the Liberty Mutual Rise conference here on March 8th of this year. So that's actually in 5 days. It's more than likely by the time that this podcast is published, that'll be in the past. But could you talk just for a minute about what that conference is about, what it's going to include, how people can maybe go back and look at it after the fact, and why you think Liberty Mutual, as an example of one company, is as interested in this subject as they are?
So International Women's Day is all about embracing change and diversity within our industry, celebrating the strengths and accomplishments of women and all different types of different people that make up this industry, but predominantly women. Liberty Mutual has always been a strong supporter of all the different aspects of the independent agency, but most importantly, the people. I have been blessed to work with Liberty since they acquired Safeco in 2008. And it's been a relationship that I do not take for granted. They are people first, and it is very well known amongst the agencies that they are there as your partner to help you with your success. And this International Women's Day event is just one of the many things that they do to help support the people in our industry. So there's going to be a variety of different topics, but for me specifically, we started off when we started the conversation and they said, we'd love to have you speak at this event. And I said, okay, cool. What should we talk about? And it started off as a conversation of mentorship, and that kind of developed to let's talk about how to create a workplace that allows women flexibility. So predominantly it's about mentorship, but then it kind of moves into us discussing what are some of the tools that can create flexible work hours so that women don't have to choose between being a great insurance salesperson or being a great mom. So, it was interesting as we were talking and kind of working through these topics, how much they went together. Because in order for women to have the flexibility they need to be extremely successful in insurance, they had to have tools that a lot of agencies today still have not embraced. And we moved into talking about interpersonal communications. We talked about different ways to access your clients online, different ways to communicate with your clients online. It was an exciting event. And we took like a 2-hour discussion and we moved it into 20 minutes. So it should be exciting.
Okay. Is there a way to watch it after the fact?
Yeah, so if you reach out to your Liberty Mutual or Safeco sales team member, if you happen to have one, or if you're an SI agent, you can reach out to your master agency, and they will have links available where you can watch all of the speakers for it. And actually, the keynote speaker is Amal Clooney, George Clooney's wife.
Okay.
So it's very exciting to see all of the different type of personalities they brought in for this, and it should be a great day.
One of the things you mentioned, creating the flexibility so that you don't have to make a choice between being a great mom and maybe a great producer or a great agency owner. That applies to men as well. I remember when my oldest son was born, I decided I wanted to be available to spend the summers with him doing whatever it was that he wanted to do by the time he was about 10 years old. So yeah, it took 10 years, but I had the summers free for my kids and then, lots of other free time because our business allows you to structure a good income, but to do it on your terms, whether you're a man or a woman.
Right.
My problem became 16 was I no longer wanted to spend time with me, and so now what to do with myself. But those are good problems to have. So you mentioned digital, and you mentioned surviving and thriving 5 years from now. And I read just the other day that the pace of mergers and acquisitions was up 26% in 21 compared to 20, which not surprising. But there's a trend going on in our industry, which is the big are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And yet a lot of people don't want to work for huge monolithic bureaucratic organizations. They want to work for smaller entrepreneurial hometown-based companies. Yet those folks in those smaller agencies have to compete with businesses that have more resources than ever before, and that divide is getting bigger. And so what are from where you sit, what are the things that these local agencies who don't want to work for those kinds of huge organizations, what do they have to do over the next 3 to 5 years to prepare to remain relevant, remain competitive, and able to thrive? What do they have to do that they're, to get ready for that?
Well, it's very important that your marketing strategy meets the consumer's expectations, right? So if your marketing strategy is to wait for the phone ring, it's not going to be a healthy option for you in the future. So getting your advertising, your marketing, your brand in front of the individuals with whom are going to purchase from you. So the larger corporations that are getting bigger respectfully have marketing budgets much larger than the small mom and pop agencies down the street. But what the small mom and pop agencies down the street have is their position in the community. Their marketing strategy needs to be in front of the consumer the same way that the larger acquisition companies have as well. However, they have their name in the community, which is completely different. My mom and dad still walk into their agent's office twice a year and make their payment because they want to chit chat with him. And I love that and respect it, but that's not every client. So we need to make sure that when you position yourself in a smaller, more rural area in particular, your position and your brand has to be in front of the consumer. So if that's at baseball games, if that's in the newspaper, if that's online, wherever it may be, you are in front of consumers that want to purchase from you. It may not be your best strategy to invest in a dynamic, large territory of consumers that have never heard of you, right? But in order to build your brand, you have to start where you are. And that's how the smaller agencies are growing today. They start where they are, and then they grow out. And a lot of those agents are embracing technology now, and they've moved away from the traditional marketing positions that they spent 30 years doing, or their parents spent 30 years doing.
Okay. So really, is that the entirety of the of what's needed is establishing a brand and is there anything else that you think agents should be focused on? You mentioned digital earlier. Um, and there's certainly digital marketing is a component of becoming a digital agency, but what other things do agencies need to focus on from a digital perspective to control expenses and increase revenue?
Well, a customer experience can feel like you're working with a multi-billion-dollar corporation, even if it's not, right? It's about embracing your communication. So, for example, I have an agency that just recently started presenting all of their digital quotes with a forward-facing video before the client opens it up. That made an entire difference. They received a significant amount of positive feedback from their clients and allowed them to put their personal touch while still presenting themselves in a way that makes them look much more bigger and sophisticated than
Hmm.
that agency's, foundation is at this time. So those small changes can create that feeling of a larger, more corporate experience while embracing what makes them great, which is their local hometown brand.
Okay, great. So, what's the role of organizations that help agents acquire capability that they couldn't maybe acquire on their own because of their size? So, your business helps agents in that respect. You're an agency alliance. You have 80 some odd insurance agencies cooperating together. Do you see that as a requirement for success in the future for smaller agencies, or is it still going to be as optional and maybe as it was 10 or 15 years ago?
I'm not sure how agencies function without us at this stage of the game. I'll be honest with you. There are so many resources out there. No matter what you're Googling, there is going to be hundreds of thousands of hits. So if you're Googling website design, it's going to be endless. And there's no way to kind of filter through and distinguish what makes good, better, or best, right? So the most beautiful part about working with organizations like ours, and I may be biased in saying it, but I have had so much positive feedback in my 16 years of being here at MSAA. When an agent calls and says, Kristin, we're interested in getting a mobile app. Where should we start? Well, that's what we do, right? We establish national partnerships with only the best, provide discounted pricing, and provide them kind of that hand holding that people need when they're starting with something new. So whether it be website design, maybe they're acquiring a new agency and they have no idea where to start when it comes to buy-sell agreements, NDAs, who do I finance with? One call to an organization like ours can give you those answers without spending hours Googling and trying to really weed through all of these details and not know which is going to be the best option for your specific situation.
Okay. And so I think around 50 to 60% of smaller independent insurance agencies, and I'll define that as say under $1 million in revenue, now belong to some sort of organization outside of their agency where they're collaborating on some basis to provide resources, tools, expertise, carriers, or something that they find is easier to do as a group than to do individually. Do you see that percentage growing in the business over the next 5 or 10 years, or do you think we've arrived at a place of static in terms of that?
Yeah. Honestly, I feel like the numbers will continue to increase. And I think that it'll be a consistent increase because of the tools and values that SIA brings to its members. Littler agencies that don't have the strength in numbers that we're able to provide to them are missing out tremendously. They're missing out on revenue generating opportunities. They're missing out on support. They're missing out on value added ancillary benefits that we bring to the table. And not all networks or groups are created equal. So this is something that someone should absolutely research and make sure that they are capitalizing on being with the best, because as a long-term vision to growing your agency in this stage of the game with direct writers growing at a large rate as well, we have to be the best. We have to make the most of every opportunity, whether it be ancillary benefits or revenue generating opportunities. So I see it increasing as we go forward.
Okay. Coming back to our earlier conversation around mentorship and that sort of thing. So I'd like to maybe wrap up our conversation with some action items for somebody who maybe have been listening to the conversation and are saying, okay, I want to increase diversity in my business, whether it's with people of a different, either I don't have enough women and I'd like to have more women in the business, or maybe other kinds of diversity. But you realize that, okay, we're a little less diverse than we want to be, and we believe that growing our business into the future depends on becoming more diverse. What are 2 or 3 things that someone can do to take immediate action to begin to make that happen?
Right. So the first thing that I would recommend if you are being a mentor of any kind, so whether it be to promote inclusion and diversity within your agency or to promote long-term relationships with people you already have as part of your team members currently, number one, make the time to be a mentor. And that means with the day-to-day hustle that we all go through, it has to go on your calendar. Put it on your calendar to meet with the team members that you see opportunity for long-term working strategies with. The second thing is, don't be afraid to have the hard conversations. So part of being a good mentor is being able to explain to them the challenges that he or she may not know are before them, and pointing out where certain struggles that you've identified can be made stronger. So, and number 3, don't count anyone out. There are so many people that are looking for support in their success that you maybe overlook them because they're quieter or they're not asking for it specifically. But when you see the quality and characteristics in someone that you see long-term potential in, grab a hold of it, be a mentor to them, and allow them the opportunity to be either a long-term great team member for you or to get to the next level of their personal success.
Okay. Well, those are great suggestions, and I appreciate you sharing them with us. And congratulations to you on the recognition that you're receiving for the work you're doing in this area. Most recently, as we mentioned at the beginning of the conversation with Rust Notes Magazine. In the event that somebody that has listened to our conversation would like to reach out to you for additional information or just to connect, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Well, Mountain State Agency Alliance is available on all social media platforms. So just put in the quick search bar, Mountain State Agency Alliance, shoot us a message, and we'd love to talk to them.
Okay, great. Kristin, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure, Tony.
I'm talking to independent agency owners about this all the time. If you'd like to have a more personalized conversation, click on the button or the link in the description and we'll make that happen. You can also reach out to me at tonycaldwell.net/contact.